I'm Rutger van Koert. I was supposed to give this presentation with Edwin Klein, so, but some of his family got ill, so I'll try the best I can do. This talk is about the Archive for Special Jurisdiction, which is, you can see there, it's a fairly large archive, and our goal is to make it digital. We work together with the National Archives, where the archives are coming from. The NIOD is where Edwin is coming from. It's the Dutch Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies. So they deal with all kinds of wars, and in this case, it's about World War II. I'm from the KNAW Humanities Cluster. The project started in 2017, and we're now in the final stages. We took a small sample of almost 14 meters from that archive. We had it scanned, and then the project really began. So the archive is, I have to look into Edwin's slides. The archive is about 300,000 persons who were persecuted after the war for collaborating with the Germans or taking advantage of the Netherlands in any state. So there are people in there who joined the SS, and there are people in there who asked prices for potatoes that were way too high during the hunger winter. And there are also innocent people in there. The archive itself is... I'll wait, I'll have faith. The archive itself is 4 kilometers long. So that's about from here, well, you could walk about an hour, and that's just the shelf space. And it's only accessible if you know the name of the person, so there's no index otherwise on it. This is what it used to be. It's an old picture. They just stacked it up high. It's actually it's about 50 different archives from all the regions of the Netherlands, and they were combined. So they're all every city had its own police force, and they persecuted persons. And I think in the 60s, they combined all the archives centrally in the Justice Department in The Hague, and after that it went to the National Archives. So here you can see an example of, these are the index cards. So they're actually doing a multi-threaded search here. But this is also one of the problems with this archive, because it's 50 different smaller archives. If you want to search for a name, you had to go through 50 sets of index cards for the archive. This has been manually entered into an Excel form, so that was a huge improvement. So they could search digitally. And these are not pictures from the archive itself, but because we cannot show it, it's still closed off to the public. But these are very extremely similar pictures from other archives which are public. This is about Anton Nussert. Anton Nussert was the leader of the Dutch, NSB, which is basically the Nazi party of the Netherlands. And here you can see also the different kinds, these kinds of things are in the archive. So you can get a sense that there's lots of different things in the archive, and a simple OCR can have problems with, well, this is actually fairly easy to recognize, but there are a lot more nasty things in there. The question we started the project with was which digital methods are suited best to make large corpora of unstructured, imperfect data available as a research facility. And the focus was on using as much technology as possible to make it easy. So we tried to minimize the amount of manual entering of metadata. And one of the researchers of the project, Ismee Tames, wants to figure out who did something, where did they do it, and what did they do, and when did they do it. And she's working on that now, actually, in the archive. So it's actually, this is the normal workflow we have. I think everybody will recognize this. As the archive is, it's post-war, but still it's in bad shape because all the staples are in there and they rust and they actually, you can see it, I think. Here, this one is actually, this is just rust. It's not a staple itself anymore. We put it through the OCR, and then we try to do stuff with the OCR and the images. And finally, we make it accessible. As the archive is not open yet, this is actually the space where we had to work. And some of the things that seem very easy to do can be quite hard if you don't have internet access. And you have to bring everything in and get it checked by somebody from the security, and then put the code back on. It's quite hard. It also makes running machine learning models a bit harder because we had to leave at 5 o'clock. So all the results are based on what you could do in a day. Later on, we got a server and we could run it, but most of the project we did in batches of 8 hours. This is also from a different archive, but this is from the Jewish Council. But this is typical for what you see in the archive. So here, this is a little bit faded text with some handwriting in between, and there you have more faded text, and that's a carbon copy, which OCR also doesn't like. As it was post-war, most of it, or during the war, there was scarcity, so the paper is actually really thin. And they used the ink ribbons for the typewriters, way too long, as you can see in the center one, because that's the original one, not a carbon copy. So we ran it through Abby OCR and through Tesseract. Abby came out best. I think Abby had something about a word error rate of 35%, which is quite a lot. But considering that there's also handwritten notes in there, then it's easy to accept that's such a high word error rate. For the typed documents, it was, I think, 15% word error rate, which is acceptable for searching. We did try training Tesseract on a simple batch, and you see the results go down a lot. The word error rate goes down. The word error rate, you can see it there. After we got the OCR out, we tried named entity, and we thought, oh, that's easy because we have a Dutch trained system, Frog, that should work. But it turned out that the language, even though it's only 70 years ago, in the 40s and 50s, then it's slightly different, and the capitalization of functions is different. So the NER, the named entity recognizer, Frog, thinks every time it sees Kapitein Jansen, he thinks Kapitein is the first name of a person, which is not. So we also had a large list of persons who were victims from the Jewish memorial and from all the graves. We have lists of names, about 300,000 for each, I think. And we just run the lists through the OCR, and we had a little tweak in there. One of the other programmers made that. We called relative Levenshtein distance. It's basically the same as normal Levenshtein distance, but you assign weights to the replacement of certain characters. So if you have the word hello, and there you spell it with, the OCR thinks it's actually 2 ones and a 0 in the end. You can assign the, because they're very similar, you can assign a penalty to it that is lower than the normal 1. So that actually gets a penalty of 0.3. And if you have a character in there that doesn't look the same, it gets a normal penalty of 1. And that improves search a lot, but you get also, some characters are the same, are very similar, but they're actually legitimate, not replaceable. So if you have the word bond and hond, those characters are very similar and they get mixed up by the OCR a lot, but they're actually also different names, so it can also hurt. You find too much. And it's really slow if you do it like this, because there's a lookup table in there and it becomes really, really slow. One of the other things we also did is very simple, get the dates out. It just tag everything. If it looks like a day, then you tag it as a day, and if you get it combined as a date, then it's an actual date, and you can enter those dates later in the system. There are also article numbers in there, which resemble dates. So you have an article number 13/8-2015, and it thinks it's a date. So that, but those are acceptable errors. This is something I didn't see yet, I think, in the conference. This is finding the right type of document. As the archive is fairly unstructured, so it's basically boxes of data that were scanned. We try to find different types of documents. So, for example, there's a report type, and there's an index card in there, and there's a picture in there, and there's there are many types of documents for which you actually would want to tweak the OCR, but some documents are also less relevant. So these are images taken from, this is the public data set, the RVL CDIP, and it contains about, I think, 400,000 images that are all tagged, and we use this data set to pre-train a neural network. As you can see, well, if you just guess, you can see the system works by looking at the layout of the images, of the documents. So we actually feed it very tiny images of 150 by 150 pixels. But as a human, you can probably guess what these are. So we trained this system, and then we cut off. This is just another picture, for example. We cut it off here, and we retrained it with a lot less data we had from the archive. And it actually worked out very well. We could, by reusing the already trained network, parts of it, you just need a lot less data. And so you get in within the 8 hours, you can do actually fairly a lot. So these are some of the results halfway there, which is more interesting than a fully trained network that would do it perfectly, because here you see that it starts mixing up documents, but the mixing up is actually very human. So there's a process for bow, which is the most common one, 13, this one. And it gets mixed up a lot with number 3, which is typed correspondence. And if you think of a police report, it's just a typed report. And it's nice to see that the system makes human errors. If you train it a little bit further, then it goes a little bit away, but some of those errors still stay in there. And we actually we found some of the errors we noticed that they were not actual errors, but it was a person who was doing the ground truth who made little errors. After that, we combined everything. So all the OCR data, all the entities we found, all the dates, document types, but also from the layout analysis, we got the number of columns and the number of text lines in there and the width and the height of the images, which is actually fairly important if you want to find certain things like group photos. They're always the same size. Unlike a portrait picture, which is more like a different type of rectangle. We have to anonymize this, but you can actually search it, and this is using Elasticsearch in the back end and SearchKit on top. And if you click through, you go through a Mirador viewer, and you can see a lot more things. And these are some conclusions. Well, OCRing the archive is useful, as we already suspected, even though it's for the important documents such as police reports, we get a lower error rate of about 15% from Abby. And that's very usable for us for doing search, because the police report often contains the names of the person twice, and you only have to get one hit to find somebody. The automatic classification of the images is actually very useful for large archives. And the data extraction is a no-brainer that we should continue on. Things that are definitely we should look into more is machine learning for optimizing the results. And one thing we didn't expect that is the named entity recognizer frog would work actually horrible instead of using the list of names. But this is also the case because we have such huge amounts of lists of names that you get good results, and otherwise NER would be good. So how to continue? There's a project plan that's in the making to digitize the full archive. So that's 4 kilometers, and I think that would take, just the scanning would take several years. And we want to link it with more external data. The archive itself this archive becomes public in 2025, and it's actually the most used archive of the National Archive. So there are a lot of people every day in there looking through the archive, and you can get access to the archive if you can show that the person who you're looking for has died. We want to link it to more external places, and we hope that we can do that, especially when the archives open up. We hope to work with a less strict regime. And automatic transcription, we also want to do HDR, which wasn't. We thought about Transkribus, but Transkribus is an online thing, so we actually cannot use it. The full report will be, which is also contains some metadata, will be online in a week. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have time for one short question, maybe.
Oh, okay. No, I have to choose. Then I'll choose the one about the NER. You mentioned names, list of names. Were these full names, or were you just looking for,
We had full names, So we actually search for both the full name and the shortened name, so we search for several spelling variants.
Yeah, I think you can discuss over lunch more if you need to, but we have to catch up a little bit. Right, thank you again.
Okay.